I landed in the US in 2016 August, and you know what happened in November 2016?
No, I am not aware.
Trump was first elected.
Donald J. Trump is the president of the United States elect.
I was in the West from 24 to 32, broadly, of my age.
Right.
कोई भी बोले ना बोले, पर आपके friends हमेशा याद रखेंगे अगर आपने उनकी शादी मिस कर दी. A lot of times, parents of people expire when they are in the West, right? And that journey, when they have to take a flight back home, 13 hours, 15 hours, 17 hours, 7 hours, 5 hours, that's the most traumatic part of their life. One good thing about the West, in comparison to India, is that your last salary doesn't matter. I was in a relationship with somebody from the US. She was white. She was from America. So that made it slightly difficult in terms of making these decisions.
If you look back at all of that today, the kind of things, let's say, you might have missed or sacrificed, would you have still gone to US, or do you think you would have stayed in India? So hi guys, welcome to the Ask Pros podcast once again. And as promised, we have always tried that we'll keep our guest fresh and we'll introduce certain new topics, which let's say you might not have heard of or you want to discover them. So today's idea is about India versus abroad. A lot of people have definitely went to the West in the last 15, 20 years. And those bets have usually been right for most people. But today, maybe times have changed. Today, there is a new outlook needed. There is a new perspective needed. So we have the perfect guest for it, Mr. Manik Pasricha, with us. Because he is someone who has lived on both sides. He has also been in the US, UK, and has worked at the MNCs there, and is also now back in India. So, who better than him to give us the true picture of what is happening and what should be expected if you want to go to abroad today, or does it even make sense financially or otherwise to go there today? So, hi Manik, welcome to the Aspros podcast.
Hey Vishwas, good to finally meet you in person. It's funny that we have been in touch for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Good to finally be across the table.
Same here, man, same here. So, in the starting, if you can, just tell our audience a bit about yourself, your background, right from the old days in India. Where were you born? Where did you go to college? And how did you finally land in the West?
So, Manik Pasricha, grew up in Old Delhi, Kashmiri Gate.
Okay.
Played at the Kashmiri Gate ground that you see when you go through the metro. Went to IIT Delhi. Was the first big exposure getting out of house, living in the hostel. Got my first job in Mumbai with a company called Fractal AI. They are going to do an IPO now in recent future. And then with them, I moved across a bit. So I went to their UK office, was handling their UK Europe operations, and then to the US with them. In the US, I was on H1B. Moved quite a couple of employers there. So started to work with the Boston Consulting Group in their AI practice, and then worked with a couple of BCG partners on M&A practice within the US. And then finally decided to move back to India after spending a decade overseas. So I moved back in 2022. So this year, it's 3.5 years for me.
So, because Manik, generally our audience is typically someone who invests. Finances are very important to them,
Yes.
right? So I'll completely jump into the finance bandwagon. So when you, let's say, move to US or countries like UK, right? What kind of salaries does one generally expect? Typically, let's say your role, if you went to BCG or Fractal at that stage, what kind of money are you making? Are those opportunities still available? And does it make sense for someone to, can you give us a sense as to the kind of money that you're making there today, and the kind of expenses that you have there, the kind of lifestyle that you would want to have there?
Yeah.
Does it still make sense?
There are two ways in which you can land as a first job in the US, okay? So one, or in the West. One is you study at a university, which a lot of people do. A lot of people had been doing that over the last few years. And that's how you land in the first job. In that process, a lot of things have to go right? So your internships have to fall in place. Maybe you get a PPO in one of the companies, and then you ultimately land at a job. The other way is you internally transfer in a large organization. So in my case, it happened with Rattle, but also BCG does those things. Over the years, such opportunities have reduced because if a BCG has to transfer you, they might as well hire somebody locally in the US. So over the years, those opportunities have reduced. But ultimately, if you're landing there, these are the two ways to do it.
Right.
When I first landed in the UK, my salary was somewhere between 50 to 60,000 pounds. Some people were there on per diem as well, so like you can do that. But essentially, that was sort of the starting point. And when I landed in the US about 1.5 years later, my first salary was about 75,000 plus minus 10,000.
Right.
So that at that stage, it felt like an okay salary to start as a baseline. If you talk to a lot of students who get their first job, they're somewhere between 50 to 80,000 USD.
Right.
It also, I must like highlight, it also depends on which part of the country that you're
Yeah.
in, right? So, in the UK, for example, if you are in London, that salary might just be sustenance. But if you are somewhere, I don't know, in Glasgow or Cardiff, it's still a superior salary. You can still like have a good life, right? Similarly, in the US, like if you are at $80,000 in Bay Area or in New York, you are officially poor.
Right.
But if you are somewhere in Mississippi or somewhere in Florida, maybe that life is going to be okay.
Right. So can you like sort of let's take this example. When you went to US, like you said, somewhere between $65,000 to $70,000 annually. What kind of expenses did you have? Like, if let's say, how much were you able to save? How much were, let's say, going for your rent, for your lifestyle needs, other expenses? What was that like?
Yeah. So the funny thing about the US and the West that you soon discover is that your paycheck and the in hand is quite different because, like for example, in the UK they deduct three kind of taxes. They have a national tax which goes to the federal government of the UK. Then there is a state, and then there is a local municipal tax, right?
Right.
The good thing is you can actually see that converting into things around you. So, like in London, I would often go to a park. The park would have all the equipments. It will have the basketball court. So you could see your money being deployed somewhere, right?
Right.
Especially same was the case in the US. So the US has dual system of taxes. They have a federal tax and they have a state tax.
Right.
So you would typically see two line items on your paycheck, and then you'll also see a social security tax, right?
Right.
And that's also a funny story because if you are like me, who are planning to move back to India or move out of the US for some reason, there is officially no claim back on that social security.
Oh God.
Right? It's something like you put some money in the pot, and there is no coming back of those funds from
Like
that
that's
pot.
gone completely to the government.
Yeah,
You're just
yeah.
handed over.
The funny story is that like the social security itself is collapsing in the US as a system. So they are thinking that it might run out of funds in 2030, 2035. So basically all the people who have put in money, you don't know where their funds are going, right? But anyway, coming back to us, let's say you have 7,000-8,000 as the top line of your pay slip. Ultimately, you might be left with maybe 60% of that
Right.
as
So-
you actually get in hand.
So
right?
typically, you're looking at 35 to 40% taxation
Yes.
on your annual salary.
Yes.
Right.
And then you start to look at your expenses. So there are some, same as India, there are some expenses you can live with, and some are indiscretionary. So like rent was a big thing. I think when I moved to Atlanta, I think my rent was about $1,000.
Okay.
So that was about 1/6 of my paycheck at that time.
And typically, what would this have been in the, let's say, the New York area or the
New York would have
LA
been
area?
double of this. So
Okay.
yeah. So when I moved to Chicago, my rent was about 1,500.
Right.
And then in the US, in New York City, it would have been probably New York, New Jersey. When I say this, it's basically so in the US, in New York, people live either on New Jersey side or on New York side, right? So New York City would be like Manhattan, like Brooklyn. That's obviously you're looking at anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000 for a studio to 1 BHK. But most of the Indians live facing Manhattan, so they are living in Jersey City. And there the rent might be 20-30% less, so it would probably be around 2,000 to 3,000.
And is there, let's say, for example, if a company like BCG hires you, and let's say one guy is posted in New York and another one is posted in Atlanta, would there be a salary difference, or will it stay the same for the same position, same role?
So you got to figure it out going into companies like these. So when I first moved from Fractal to BCG, I was also moving from Atlanta to Chicago. So I adjusted for two things. One was just the move in the switching cost, going from employer A to employer B, and then a jump in the cost of living index. So when I joined BCG, I was at about 140,000 plus minus 10%. So it also depends on like that's where a lot of your negotiation also has to come in, right? You have to also understand what exactly are you bringing to the table. Are you able to communicate that? Especially, I want to call out, for example, women find it difficult to communicate what they are bringing to the table. So, if you're a woman listener, you need to make sure that you have spoken to enough people and able to articulate your value clearly. Uh, One good thing about the about the West, in comparison to India, is that your last salary doesn't matter, right? There is no concept of giving me your last paycheck and then I'm going to give you a delta on top of it.
Right.
You can have that as a sort of a fair discussion, like good faith argument, but you could easily, there are ample number of cases in the West where you might have been at 100,000 or whatever salary, and then you are suddenly at a 400,000 salary because the skill set you're bringing or because of the nature of the role, you suddenly are more important for a company. And that's where like the labor market forces also play out, which which something that India should also learn from and think about.
So, and typically, if you were to give me a savings rate, when let's say you're earning somewhere between, like you said, $70,000-$80,000 annually, and 40% is going into taxes. After that, whatever is left, how much are you able to save in let's say, a percentage basis?
You need to be able to. So I was saving about 2 to 3 thousand, 2,000 to 2,500 per month.
Okay.
And when I say saving, it was essentially going into two places. It was going into an immediate fund that I would might need as cash flow, and then a lot of it was also going into investments. So I had the day I entered there, I started my brokerage or 401k account, and I was basically doing investments there. You need to also realize the funny thing was, which I don't know when this will happen. कि 2016 से 2021 तक we were at near zero interest rate world in most of the world, right? We were very low interest rate, which meant कि the markets were really charging through because a lot of money was getting deployed in stocks, equities, stuff like that. So it was actually a good time to cut back on your lifestyle expenses, do less of discretionary expenses, but also maximize on your maybe putting into your
Investments
stocks or
and
equities.
savings, yeah.
So people who did that actually were like very good off, very well off avoiding that behavior. क्योंकि इससे उल्टा भी होता है, by the way. Like a lot of kids, let's say they went to University of Illinois or University of Florida, and then they're suddenly in their first job. ठीक है, तो उससे तब तक उससे पहले तो पैसे थे नहीं लाइफ में. Like you were basically on basic meal plan, basic healthcare, basic clothing. So like you were basically living as below sustenance, right? As a university student, and then you suddenly get a 60-70,000 package, and you realize, boss, this is like YOLO life. Matlab, I'm living in the US, I'm living in Miami. Let me go to Vegas. Let me try to enjoy the life. So you're suddenly now living a life on credit cards and on debt in the US.
Right.
So a lot of people also go crazy when this happens.
So we have covered, I think, the first basics part of how salaries work there, and very positive thing that you mentioned that your last paycheck doesn't matter in the US or in the UK as well. Now tell me, what kind of growth can a person expect there? How is, let's say, growth structured also there compared to India maybe? And also in financial terms also, for example, if somebody, a 25 to 30-year-old who has gone there and has started at that basic salary, how much can he spread his potential to up till, let's say, when he's 40 or 50, so that he has enough money to maybe, is that possible also, that he has enough money there saved, taking into account everything, that he'll form a family there, he'll have his expenses, maybe he need to send back money home also, and then eventually be able to retire and come back to India, if that's his plan.
Yeah. No, that's a very valid point, right? That's why a lot of people do that move. Essentially, a lot of it gets driven by what's your internal drive in life, right? And I love to live by the line from Fight Club, which says that your job or your immediate salary does not define who you are, right? So you need to wake up every morning feeling clear, what is my innate value? What gives me happiness, right? Maybe you are at a 70,000 salary job, but you have friends around you. Life is good, you're having a good time, you're mentally feeling good, right? In that case, just let it continue in the way that you feel makes sense for you. As opposite to it, maybe you are living in Manhattan at a 300,000 or a 500,000 salary. You don't have any friends around you. You're basically living, eating out every single day, every single meal is out.
Living alone like Harvey Specter.
Exactly. And like, you will not, that is not something that you would be able to sustain. So a lot of people I speak to like about 100 people a year, essentially moving back or considering moving back. And a lot of people just want to do it because they feel alone. There is nobody to talk to, and that does not have. It doesn't matter if you are in Minsk or if you're in Colombia. It actually happens in places like Manhattan as well, where you just don't feel close enough emotionally, mentally to be able to open up to somebody.
Right.
And bright lights and skyscrapers can only take you so far. You actually need people whom you can have a good time with, right?
So, like, do you think that the socialization aspect is missing in the West? Like, is it because of, let's say, because you sort of feel like an outsider, or do you feel like it's internally sort of part of the culture there?
Somehow, it's hard to lean on people in a bunch of situations, in case, especially if you have not grown up with them, right?
Okay.
So, like a simple example, it was quite easy for me to go out with colleagues here in India when I worked here. We could go out, have dinners, just explore city in India. But when you go there, there is always a limit to which you can have proximity with your coworker. Essentially, people are having a job, they are happy, but they also have a life outside of it. So they don't want to mix those lives. So a
Right.
big part of, like, you will not be able to make friends with your colleagues essentially in the US. Now comes your community outside of it. So a lot of Indians rely on their Indian community.
Right.
Maybe they go to a temple and they have their community from there. Maybe they went to university. That's the
Right.
community from there. So essentially, you need to find your tribe. If you're able to find it, things become slightly easier. Anything from, like, buying your first car, buying your first house, whatever is a life milestone, having your first baby, getting married, like all those things become slightly easier when you have people with shared experiences, shared memories there.
And lastly, on this particular finances aspect, what I want to ask is that today, let's say in 2025, does it make sense for an Indian, because you said the opportunities have started to reduce, right? And typically under the Trump administration, we've seen all the halla gulla
Yeah.
that has happened recently with regards to H1B, and although clarifications were made that those were for new applications, but largely what I am seeing is that that entire journey is now being decentralized to maybe not go there, right? Or if you, even if you want to go there, it will take you, some kind of efforts to really, get the rewards that you need, right? So today in 2025, do you feel that it makes sense for somebody to go there from all kind of aspects? It can be growth also, like you said, that maybe you're not looking for a paycheck, maybe you're looking for a growth kind of environment and a mindset, and maybe you'll capitalize it and you'll maybe come back or stay there. And for a lot of people it is completely financial, right? Uh, their plan is to basically go and work there for 20-25 years, and basically the kind of corpus that they make there, and they'll come back and settle here, like India would be their retirement home.
Yeah.
So do you think that does make sense in today's time?
Yeah. So coming back to my story, I landed in the US in 2016 August, and you know what happened in November 2016?
No, I am not aware.
Trump was first elected.
Yeah, right.
So that was like an interesting shocker landing there and just looking at that environment playing out. Funny thing was, I was in Atlanta, so all the cities are sort of blue, thick blue, and all the immediate places are extremely red outside. So Georgia, where Atlanta is fairly red. So in the morning, the next morning, I could see contrasting reactions for people on the street, the people I spoke to in the office, stuff like that.
Right.
Obviously, like, this current administration has made no doubt that they are essentially looking to curb legal immigration as well, which I find quite perplexing as well. Um, it has also changed the nature of jobs available in the US, right?
Right.
So let's say at any point, let's say Meta had 10 jobs and TCS had 100 jobs. Now it's sort of become more like 50-50 or 60-40, leaning towards Meta. Meta would typically be hiring people upwards of $300 to $500,000. So the kind of people who are immigrating, or the kind of skill set that is needed to get to that situation, is also has drastically changed, right?
Right.
So it's not that you are now looking at facing an option; it's just that the option is presented to you, right? Another aspect to this that you need to think about: ki US is not West. West is not US only. While
Right.
US is a predominant conversation place and there's a lot of stuff happening there, there are a lot of other countries also, in case you have made up your mind that you don't want to live in India, right? You can always go to Dubai, Singapore, uh, Australia. There are a whole host of other countries that you can think about. The question to ask yourself is, what exactly is the trying value for me, right? The trade-off is quite clear, right? Like, if you are in India, right, you are needing a few things in life. One, community is very important for you,
Right.
right? You have immediate friends, you have immediate family. Second is, you like things to be done for you, right? So like
Right.
some food will be delivered for you in 30 minutes, some groceries would be delivered to you in 10 minutes. You don't have to step out of the house, right? So if you are the kind of person who likes familiarity and convenience, then that is a core value for you, and you would want to like be maximizing that. Similarly, if you are going to the West, then a few things are core to you. One is you maximize your sort of salary or money making capacity, right? So, like the top line would be much higher if you are in the West. Like very few jobs in India can compare with that. But then the question is, do you really want to stay in the job, or can you actually become an entrepreneur coming to India, right? So that's first value, that you want to maximize your salary or something. Second is quality of life, right? I mean, it's a factual situation that the AQI in Delhi today is 600, 700. And it's a factual situation that the AQI, even in the busiest city of the US, would be less than 50, 100.
Right.
There is no debate about this, right? The quality of the life is such. Third is civic sense. While US allows a lot of freedom and West allows a lot of freedom, they also attach responsibilities along with it. So even in the busiest parts of Manhattan, you will not see people just walking around the street, walking on the road without actually looking left and right. You will see people stopping at the red light, right? So if you prioritize these things in life, getting good salary, quality of life, and having basic civic sense, then India is not necessarily something that you feel immediately comfortable with. Now, I'm not saying AQI is not important for me. Obviously, I want to survive as well. The question is, how much can relatively I feel that it can improve over time versus somebody who has made a decision to stay in the US thinks it can improve over time, right? And this is a decision that we are not only looking at passively, we also want to participate in that, right?
Right.
Like if the AQI situation continues like that in Delhi, we also need to, as citizens, be not be passive about this, but also like respond to it, right? So this is sort of a core of an argument about what exactly drives you and where do you see the potential of these things heading towards.
I'll touch, on other aspects of living in the West, and this is particularly we have touched a bit upon this, but now I would like to go, deep further on this. Is basically the social life and the relationships aspect of it, right? Uh, a young guy or a young girl that is going there, right, typically leaving their family, their community. Uh, Now the chances of them, getting married there, finding new relationships, basically forming a new family, is basically what they're signing up for. So what is that like? How did that work for you? How do you see generally in your peer groups how it has worked out for them?
Yeah, I think that is a very important and often underspoken aspect of this migration. Because essentially most of the people who are doing these, making these choices in life are anywhere between 25 to 35 year old. And that's when, having a life partner, trying to understand how does the life of people around you affect by your decision really matters, right? So in my case, I was a little fortunate that I was able to make this move quite early in my life. So like when I first went to the West, I was basically 24, right? This is maybe 5 years before usually it happens for a median case. People usually are there at 28, 29, 30. So that afforded me some level of initial freedom, at least from the parents' worry. ये parents की worry नहीं है कि ठीक है, they are getting older, but you still have some time to
Right.
maneuver that thing around, right? Often what happens is people have to make a choice between do we understand the interest of our immediate family, parents, taking care of parents and stuff like that, or do we look at maximizing our quality of life, right? And that's where again your inherent voice internally has to decide for you. Nobody can decide for yourself, right? Having said that, like there are options for quality of life for parents both in India as well as outside. So like for example, if your parents are here, then there are now old age facilities, there is a community aspect to your parents living here, maybe there's more like live here. So there are ways to cater to that if you have still decided that you want to live in the West. One of the things that I should highlight though is a lot of times uh, parents of people expire when they are in the West, right? And that journey when they have to take a flight back home, 13 hours, 15 hours, 17 hours, 7 hours, 5 hours, that's the most traumatic part of their life as they have retold to me.
Right.
So think about that as well. That are you okay with living that kind of choice in your life or not? Right.
Hmm.
So that's one aspect to it. The second aspect is about relationships, right? So like I was single when I went to the West. It would probably not have been that straightforward a choice if I was with somebody, because then it becomes more of a couple conversation, even though you're
Right.
not married. But then you're sort of like taking people along and stuff like that. A lot of folks also, when they are in the West, they because just the nature of their age at that time, they're able to find partners there, whether they find people in their communities, whether they find them in the university,
Right.
in their offices, or on dating apps and stuff. So it's about making a choice whether you want to execute that or not. I was When I moved there, I was in a relationship with somebody from the US.
Hmm.
She was white. She was from America. So that made it slightly difficult in terms of making these decisions for me, because then I'm not making these decisions alone. We were sort of making it together.
Right.
But then when we were not together, it sort of made it easier for me to move back to India as well. So that
Right.
sort of became slightly easier in that sense. But funny thing is, one thing that people don't speak about is, so I was in the West from 24 to 32 broadly of my age.
Hmm.
That's when a lot of my friends were also getting married, right?
Right.
So that's when you miss a lot of these key parts of your life, right?
Right.
क्योंकि
Right.
कोई भी बोले ना बोले, पर आपके फ्रेंड्स हमेशा याद रखेंगे अगर आपने उनकी शादी मिस कर दी, especially
Right.
if they are from like an engineering school and they like,
Right.
really there is some level of camaraderie. So that is one like huge regret that I have.
Right.
And most of the cases, like if somebody is inviting you for their wedding, they'll probably do it 2 months, 3 months before it. You can't make that arrangement. थोड़ा सा और heads up चाहिए, but no excuses. I was terrible in terms of not being able to do that for my friends, which I really regret.
No, but that's a big challenge, no? Because when you even it's nobody wants to miss that, right?
Yeah.
But when you have to open your, the website and you check it on the airline, you know that it is going to cost this much to land there and to come back,
Yeah.
right? It's a huge cost because typically, how much would a flight cost between, let's say, US to India? Typically, I think 1 lakh to 1.5
Right.
lakhs would be bare minimum,
Right.
right? So you're looking at a 2 to 3 lakh expense, and on how many friends can you do that?
Right.
Right.
I think that is for sure one part, but I didn't think of that as a cost thing. It
Yeah.
was just that there was a lot happening in life anyway.
Right.
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 मतलब it's not that I could not afford that amount of money. It was कि यार बॉस प्रोजेक्ट चल रहा है, काम चल रहा है, परफॉर्मेंस अप्रेजल है, ये क्लाइंट पे मिस हो जाएगा. Like a lot of things were happening like that.
Right.
I was also doing my MBA there with the University of Chicago. So like there was also a college life associated with all these things was happening,
Right.
right? And that made it much more complicated. Like in hindsight, spending a lakh and a half for something that you will cherish for your life is immaterial.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'll ask you an important question here. Like, if you look back at all of that today, the kind of things, let's say, you might have missed or sacrificed, would you still take that call? Like, would you have still gone to US, or do you think you would have stayed in India?
I respectfully, I don't think it's a right framing of a question,
Hmm.
because I feel with the hindsight of knowledge, you can make a lot of different decisions differently.
Right.
The question you ask yourself is, and the way that I thought about this was, so I spent the entire 2021 just by myself reflecting on this. 2021 was also a terrible year COVID-wise.
Right.
Things were happening, negative things were happening both in the US and in India. And in that background, I was thinking about how do I want my life choices to play out. Right? And the core decision that the way I approach this was what Jeff Bezos calls as regret minimization framework.
Right.
Question is, boss, today you are 30, let's say. Tomorrow you're going to be 60. Okay? At 60, looking back, which decision would give you less regret? Okay?
Right.
So looking back, I felt that there were three things which were important to me at that time. One was being closer to family, being able to become a positive influence in their life was a very core tenet of my life.
Right.
And that could not happen by just sitting at a distance. But even if you're sitting in Dubai, right, you just like sometimes the families feel that you are far, right? And the distance is not in terms of miles, but it's actually in terms of, can I contact this person? Do I feel this person is next to me? Right? So that's one thing. That was a core tenet, right? The second was I wanted to contribute in a positive way to my community, right? You can define community as Delhi, you can define community as India, you can define community in the way that is important to you.
Right.
But looking back, I felt यार मुझे सबसे ज़्यादा मज़ा तब आता है if I'm able to positively contribute in some way.
Right.
Our IIT system also sort of gave us some leaning towards that, right? और IIT वालों को गाली पड़ती है कि यार सबके सब उठ के US चले जाते हैं after graduation. So I wanted to buck that trend, right?
Right.
And then the third aspect is I wanted to start something, right? You can do that in the US as well. I just felt more closer to starting something in India because I felt कि यार यहाँ पे कुछ बड़ा बनेगा तो it would be like a positive net effect for everybody involved, right? So that's sort of the three basic tenets to which I looked at that decision for myself. And I cannot, we can keep on like over analyzing it or going back, यार ये data होता ये data होता. Ultimately, it's a intuition and a heart to heart call. It cannot be done on terms of per capita,
Right.
GDP metric, or it cannot be done on quality of life metric. You can make good quality life in India. You can make good quality life in the West. The question is, what are you willing to sacrifice for?
Yeah.
Right? Like for example, a lot of people throw this GDP number per capita number to me यार कि यार इंडिया का GDP 3,000 या 2,500 है और US का 70,000 80,000 है, like there is so much difference, why would you do that, right? The question, the I can always counter by saying this कि यार US के अंदर if you are living a poor life, let's say you are living in Mississippi, right? Your GDP is 50,000 USD, ठीक है? That's the per capita GDP there. If you are living in a posh space in Delhi or Gurgaon, your GDP would be comparable only, GDP per capita. You're probably at like a 20 to 40,000 GDP per capita if you're living in a posh space in Delhi, Gurgaon, etc. Right? And if you have decided to move back, then you are already self-selected yourself to be the top 1% of India. Right? So you're already hanging out with that GDP per capita situation.
Absolutely.
Right? So the point is, we can keep on arguing over facts and data and just like, these stories. The question is, what in your heart do you want to make it work for?
Yeah, I think very important points you've raised here. This sets up the tone for you coming back to India. Now we can go on to that particular journey of yours. Like you said, that what triggered for you was being closer to family, to make positive impact within that community, right, and to build something of your own. Now, I think it's been roughly what you came exactly in 2022, right?
Yeah, mid 22.
Mid 2022. So it's been somewhere about 2.5 years, right? So sum this 2.5 years for you. Like, what are you enjoying?
3.5 years.
Sorry, 3.5 years. What's has been for you like in terms of what are you enjoying? What do you still maybe miss about the West, or things that you're surprised by in India, which let's say you would not have expected in 2014? So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So when I moved back, obviously when you move back, एक immediate shock तो होता ही है, right? Because you are sort of living in a life where you can walk to a park or nature very easily in the West. You can go to a grocery store easily. There is not much traffic, right? So there's a sticker shock, right? When you come back, the question is, how do you adapt to it, right? Like a lot of people think about, if you look at a lot of debate about this, होता है यार कि traffic India में traffic है, right? That's all true, right? The question is, if you are the top 1% of India, can you afford a driver, right? The moment you afford a driver, all that traffic worry you're not going to be thinking about, you'll be sitting at the back of the car. That will also give employment to that person, right? So essentially, and jo time of save karoge from the month, the amount of expenditure on that, the monthly salary of a driver, you will more likely more than that would be able to make up with a peace of mind business decision, a peace of mind employment decision. Okay. So the question is that now coming back, it's been 3.5 years for me. Or people often ask me, I remember this one time I was driving with my sister, and ऐसी generally बातें कर रहे थे, तो like she said, like we were stuck in the Gurgaon to Delhi का traffic at peak hour. So she said, Manik, you don't miss the US? मतलब miss नहीं करता तू? And at the cost of being frivolous, I said, यार miss करता हूँ मैं. फिर मैं Zomato पे देखता हूँ कि छोले भटूरे अवेलेबल हैं, तो मैं ऑर्डर कर लेता हूँ और फिर मिस करना बंद कर देता हूँ, right? So the question is कि boss, of course, I mean, like there are some quality of life aspect that you miss quite a bit, right? But then the question is कि यार क्या sign up कर रहे हो, right? Let's say you decide कि यार quality of life US की better है, right? I can always counter it by saying कि tomorrow if you have kids, right? Now kids are given gun safety instruction in schools, right? कि how do you prevent yourself if some psycho person essentially tries to kill yourself in the school, right? Are you okay with that quality of life? Is that quality of life okay with you, right? There is like there are so many aspects to this in which you can like counter by saying कि यार ये हमारी value नहीं है, right? We are Indian by nature. This is not our core value, right? So what is the price for paying that value, right? That sort of it depends. One core insight that I felt coming back to India was कि यार so in my case I was salaried in the US, ठीक है, and I was working in consulting. ठीक है? I came to India. I started my own business. So I went from salaried to business entrepreneur. I went from sort of a AI space to financial services, right? And I came from US to India. So these are three simultaneous levers that you're pulling in your life, right? My recommendation in hindsight, so a life learning for me was कि don't pull three levers at once, right?
Got it.
Pull one, एक तो lever pull ही करके भी हो तुम US से India आने पे. Don't pull other levers also. Maybe come from your same. The easiest transition is if you're coming from the same job. Let's say you were working with Fractal, BCG, McKinsey, whatever you're working with. Move with them to their India office.
Got it.
Right? Even if you're married, it just gives you that 3 to 6 months of time, transition time, to be able to adapt to the new atmosphere, right? With the stability of looking at your कि किस city में रहना है, किस type की life चाहिए, you know, where would your kids go to school? Like it just gives you some comfort in terms of making that choice, right? I just felt that I just took it too much by making all that levers work at once, and that becomes super difficult because you're coming from a salaried job in the US and now you want to do startup in India. Startup ecosystem is its own beast in India. There are so many people who have no context on you, right? You were not there. They have not seen your growth. You can write your resumes or write your achievements in whatever way you want, but they don't know you, right?
Yeah.
So being able to do that at a easier pace is important. In hindsight, for example, I had already decided कि यार मुझे startup में काम करना है, तो I should have probably worked in a funded startup in India. Right? I came back in 2022. Some people had raised money. 2021 के अंदर एक height of VC investment हो चुका था. So there were a bunch of fairly funded startups at that time. In hindsight, I could have chosen to work in any of them. I would have approached their founders, try to understand कि क्या क्या कर सकते हैं, and I would have probably got a decent option there. Whether I want to stay there for 6 months or 6 years is my prerogative after that. But initially, it just gives you a bit of a breathing space and you move back, right? I think that's something that I could have done differently. It's one of the things. Another insight I got was कि यार, and this is for entrepreneurs, कि यार इंडिया का यूज केस एक ये भी है, फॉर बेटर और वर्स, कि यू हैव गुड क्वालिटी employees available at not astronomical salaries, right? So you can get a good quality lawyer, you can get a good quality accountant, you can get a good quality salesperson, you can get a good quality coder at not astronomical prices, right? So between the tussle between whether you should become an entrepreneur in India or a salaried person in India, slightly lean towards being an entrepreneur in India because of these things. If you feel कि यार कुछ passion है, कुछ problem statement समझ आती है, कुछ West में हमने सीखा है which can come back, can be applied in India, कुछ interesting pattern है जो play out हो रहा है, right? Can that be applied in India? All these factors are something that you have learned by your quote-unquote exposure, right? तो वो exposure को apply करने के लिए, this is actually a very fertile ground to apply that. That is the second insight which I still think is going to play out. So so like step one, come back, do not disrupt a lot of your life, try to minimize your levers. But step two, look at the value proposition of this country. This country is asking, if you are smart, this country is asking you to be a problem solver, and it will reward you for that. So use that capability instead of becoming just another herd of sheep and just like becoming this one guy who's just carrying this badge around as an employee. Your life is supposed to be more because you've got exposure now. Apply that.